afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining us for another Self-Directed IRA Saturday class. We're all very excited to have Jay Connor here with us. He's going to be talking about how real estate investors can work with owners of self-directed IRAs in order to get some of that private money or really tap into that private money that a lot of people may just not know how to do or really where to start. So prior to getting into the actual presentation itself, I want to make a quick introduction to Quest for those of you who do not know who we are. We are a self-directed IRA custodian. We put on education like this once or twice a week, depending on the week, but we are here every Saturday streaming live at 12 Central. Before we actually get into the presentation topic, we always like to give you a quick disclaimer that we do not provide any tax, legal, or investment advice. So overall, these types of presentations are for educational purposes only. You want to ensure that no matter what transaction you're engaging into for any reason, that you do conduct your due diligence before doing so. Currently, we are putting on these classes every Saturday, as well as most Tuesdays, always at 12 p.m. Central. If we are hosting any live events at our Houston, Austin, or Dallas office, we'll also be streaming those live events to you here through our YouTube page, as well as Facebook. We have one event that I'm always very excited to talk about and ties in very closely with today's topic, which is our virtual networking happy hour. This is something we do the fourth Wednesday of every month at 6:30 p.m. Central. And essentially, it's a Zoom call that you'll be able to join from all across the country to talk to investors as well as individuals with the opportunities to invest and find those connections through a virtual medium. So very, very wonderful event that we host, and I highly encourage you to check it out. Colin has linked our event page in the chat. Feel free to give that a click and check out what we have upcoming for you. And like I said, anything that we host live, we are not only streaming through our YouTube and Facebook, but we're also posting it to our YouTube and Facebook. So feel free to check out any classes that you may have missed, or if you want to even revisit this presentation after the fact, feel free to check us out through there. And now, as always, if you have any questions at all, feel free to get in touch with an IRA specialist. The QR code will allow you to schedule a consultation directly through our calendar. You can always reach us on our live chat feature on the website. Now, this is just during normal business hours, but an IRA specialist is always monitoring those chats for you to answer any questions that you may have. So we'll leave the phone number, we'll leave the email. But with that being said, we really do want to hop right into it. I encourage you to put all of your questions in the chat for Mr. Connor. We will get to them at the end. He's going to go through his presentation material, and then we can go ahead and get those questions answered for you guys. So with that, I'm going to bring up Mr. Jay Connor, and good morning to you, sir. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hello there, Bree. It's so great to see you, and I'm just so thankful that Quest has invited me today to talk about my most favorite subject that I'm most passionate about, and that is how to raise a lot of private money without ever asking for it, and how to work with Quest account holders to create win-win scenarios.
Well, we're very happy to have you. And I can see actually we have a few comments already in the chat that they're very excited to be here and hear you talk. So I'm going to go ahead and just pass it right off to you. I'm going to throw your presentation up on the screen and then take it away, sir.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much, Bree. And again, everyone, welcome to this presentation. You're going to have questions come to mind. And so as Bree just said, I encourage you, type your questions in the chat, in the comment bar as they come to mind. And we'll make sure and get your questions answered when I finish going over this material. So how to raise private money, a lot of it without asking for money, how to work with Quest IRA account holders and create win-win scenarios. So I'm going to show you in this short presentation, and we will be wrapping up within an hour. I'm going to be showing you, first of all, how to never miss out on a deal because you didn't have the funding. And I tell you, I know what that feels like. But ever since January 2009, I've never missed out on a real estate deal because I didn't have plenty of private money available to me. I'm going to share with you the 5 easy steps in working with people to attract private money. And what I'm sharing with you is my exact system, my exact strategies that I've been using since 2009. So I'm just not regurgitating what I went and read in a book somewhere. What I'm sharing with you actually works in the real world, and it's exactly how I do it. I'm going to share with you 3 different categories how to attract funding, private money from 3 different sources. Secondly, in addition to that, how can you locate over 12,000 private lenders a month at the push of a button on your laptop? I'm going to share that with you. And also, I'm going to share with you the short story version of how I actually raised $2,150,000 in private money within less than 90 days. I promise you also, I'm going to show you how to buy properties without using any of your own money. In fact, we're going to be talking about how it is you take none of your own money to the closing table and you actually bring home a big check when you buy a property. I mean, who wants to get paid to buy properties, right? And take none of your own money to the closing table. How to receive multiple checks on every transaction that I do. And if you're into rehabbing, how do you get all of your rehab money up front when you buy a property? And you don't even have to wait on getting draws. I never pull down draws when I'm working with my private lenders. Now, let's go ahead and be clear about this. You're going to be using private money from when the seller requires all the cash. And of course, as we know in the real world, most of the time, the seller, no matter who it is, if it's a bank-owned property in the multiple listing service, or if you're buying a property from an individual, a for sale by owner, we know even though we try to negotiate on terms and use creative financing and buy subject to the existing note and all those strategies, at the end of the day, most people are going to require all the cash. So even if you're in what we call the pretty house business and you're not into rehabbing, that's fine. You know, sometimes students will say to me, they'll say, Jay, I don't need any private money because I just want to be in the pretty house business and I want to buy on terms, for example. Well, my statistics show, and I've reviewed since 2003, that's when I went full time in this with my wife, Carol Joy. I've reviewed thousands and thousands of property lead sheets from for sale by owners. And what I have discovered is that 87% of for sale by owners require all the cash, will not sell to me creatively with some kind of creative financing. 13% will, and I'm a pretty good negotiator, and my acquisitionist is too. But if 87% of all the for sale by owners require all the cash, if you don't have the private money lined up, ready to go, then you're going to miss out on the high majority of the deals. Now, in case you have to jump off early and you can't stay for the entire presentation, I want you to go ahead and write down this URL link because I don't want you to miss out. I'm so excited about my book, Where to Get the Money Now. I should have titled it Where to Get the Private Money Now. And this is how and where to get money for your real estate deals without relying on traditional banks or hard money lenders. And by the way, I love my hard money lender friends. I say establish as many relationships as you can in place. In fact, I was just a guest on Wendy Sweet's Sunrisers yesterday morning, and she's a hard money lender in South Carolina, North Carolina. So get as many relationships in place as you can. But in case you have to jump off early and you can't stay on, my book, Where to Get the Money Now, goes into all the details as to how I do it step by step, scripting, what to say, how to start a conversation, all that. You can grab my book at www.jayconner, and I'm an ER, not an OR, JAYCONNER.com/book. And this will take you through all the details of exactly how I do it. The book is free. Just cover shipping and handling. I think it's $6.95 or whatever to cover the shipping and handling. I actually lose money on that. I send it out first class. By the time the book's printed, it goes first class. It's costing me like 15 bucks. Anyway, the only reason I share that with you up front here in the presentation is in case you have to jump off early. Be sure and take advantage of that. So first of all, I guess we should talk for a moment about how in the world am I qualified to talk about private money? How did I end up in this world of private money and end up being the private money authority? Well, I remember it like it was yesterday. From 2003 to 2009, my wife, Carol Joy, and I, we We've been investing here in Eastern North Carolina in two small counties since 2003. So we've been in this now for 20 years, full time. Rehabbed, coming up on 475 houses here in the local area. But anyway, from 2003 to 2009, I relied on local banks. I don't even know about hard money lenders. I didn't know about creative strategies and creative financing. I relied on banks to fund our deals. And back in those days, which, quite a few of you may not remember, I mean, you could get an unsecured line of credit so easy at the local bank. So that's what I had. I had an unsecured line of credit. Well, January of 2009 comes along, and some of you may recall what was going on in 2007, 8, and 9 with the global financial crisis. Well, I had two houses under contract, ready to buy, ready to close. And I called up my local banker and I found out very, very quickly that my line of credit had been shut down. I had no funding. And my first thought was, well, I wish somebody had told me about that before I put those houses under contract. So, anyway, my definition of coincidence is God's way of staying anonymous. And so I learned about private money so quickly right after learning I was cut off from the banks. And I studied private money. I put my program together and I started teaching people. There's the secret to how you can attract so much private money without asking for it. I started teaching people in what I call our warm market, people that we had some kind of association with. We went to church together. They were in my cell phone, on my email list, etc. My entire social network. I started teaching people my private lending program. And in the book that I just told you about, in the book, my entire private lending program is in the book. I'm going to give an overview of it here on the presentation to where you've got a good feel for it. So I started teaching people how they can earn high rates of return safely and securely. Now, Carol Joy and I, we've got 47 private lenders funding our deals. Over half of them have got their account at Quest and they're using their retirement funds, right, to fund our deals. Well, you don't need 47 private lenders funding your deal. You just need 2 or 3 to start, right? So it was because of that difficulty. It was because of that challenge of not having funding. I had a choice. I could quit or I could find a better way and a quicker way to fund our deals. And I tell you what, being cut off from the bank was the biggest blessing in disguise that has happened to our business since we started. If it wasn't for that difficulty and challenge of being cut off from the bank, I wouldn't even be here with you today talking about private money. So it was because of, pushing through, finding a better way that, and back when that happened, you may recall there were so many foreclosures, 2007, 8, and 9, and 10, and the banks weren't lending money. You had to have the money, you had to have the funding, the private money to buy those properties. And guess what? The first 12 months after losing that year of 2009, after losing our lines of credit at the bank, our business tripled because we had the private money available to fund the deals. So that's how I got started in all this. Right now, our total target market here where we invest is only 40,000 people, only 40,000 people. We do 2 to 3 houses a month. Our average profits right now are $78,000 per deal, per house that we do. And we get more offers accepted because we have the private money. And now you're going to learn how to have as much private money. In fact, we got a problem and you can have a problem too. You can have more private money available to you than you can put to work. We have one of our private lenders that's been with us now for about 6 or 7 years. She just called me up earlier this week. She now has an additional $500,000 that she wants to put to work and wants us to invest and loan us more money for our houses. So the deal is money is all around you. All you need to do, at my recommendation, is just duplicate my system step by step, and the money will be chasing you very, very quickly. So who is a private lender? What's my definition that I'm talking about of a private lender? Well, a private lender is a human being, just like you, just like me. So we're not talking about doing business with institutions. We're doing business with individuals who loan you money from either their investment capital and or their retirement money, right? So when you're talking with a potential private lender in your own warm market, people you got some kind of association with, that's why it's going to be so important for you to have a relationship with an IRA specialist at Quest, so that when you're talking with someone, and in the book, I give you all the scripting, how to start a conversation. In fact, why don't you go ahead and write this down? Let me give you just a little tip right here on how I love to start conversations with potential private lenders that have retirement funds. Now, they don't have to have retirement funds. We've got millions of dollars that are being invested with us from our private lenders just using their liquid investment capital. But when you're talking with someone, you learn they have retirement funds. Here's one of my favorite ways to start a conversation. I love did you know questions. I love questions that start with the three words, did you know? Well, write this down. You're talking with someone, start a conversation, or in the midst of your conversation, start it like this. Did you know there's a way people can earn unlimited money per year tax free? Of course, they're not going to know the answer to that question, right? And when they say no, you're going to say, well, have you ever heard of self-directed IRAs? And in all probability, they're going to say no. And so now here's the answer. And you can start your conversation about talking about self-directed IRAs and Quest and how you do business with Quest. And so the answer to that question, how people can earn unlimited money per year tax-free, if they have a Roth IRA and an account at Quest with that money, well, that's after-tax dollars. So, we've got one private lender just last year earned $70,000 tax-free. And so by opening up part of your conversation with that did you know question, that will lead you right into a beautiful conversation about what private money is, private lending is. Start teaching them your program that you have, that you offer. The traditional way to borrow money that I did the first 6 years in this business is to go to the local bank, get on your hands and knees, put your hands underneath your chin, and you say to Miss Banker or Mr. Banker, please fund my deal, please fund my deal. Well, guess what? That's not the deal in this world. We're not asking for a mortgage doing business like this. We're actually offering a mortgage. All right. So another way that we're not begging and chasing and all that is when I've got a deal ready to fund and I've got a private lender they've told me they got X number of dollars available. I've got a handwritten spreadsheet of my private lenders and how much money they have available at any given time. I call them up and I don't try to pitch the deal. I've never pitched a deal in my life to my private lenders. And the reason for that is I've taught all of them in my warm market what private money is and what my private lending program is. So when I've got a deal to fund, I call them up and I tell them four things. I say, hey, I've got great news for you. I can now put your money to work. I already know how much they've got. They've told me. They've been waiting for the phone call. And so I can now put your money to work. I've got a property, a house in Newport with an after repaired value of $200,000. The funding required is $150,000. You see, my maximum is 75% of the after repaired value, not of the purchase price. So I got a house in Newport, after repaired value of $200,000. Funding required is $150,000. They've already told me they got $150,000, right? Closing is next Friday. I'll need for you to have your funds wired from Quest. That is if I'm talking with someone that's, got a Quest account by next Thursday, because closing is next Friday. End of conversation. You notice I didn't say, do you want to fund the deal? That's the most stupid question I could ask them. Of course they want to fund the deal because they've been waiting for my phone call. You see, when you teach people about private money and you learn they've got retirement funds in addition to those people that are just using their investment capital, and you introduce them to your Quest rep, your Quest IRA specialist. And then Quest holds their hand on moving their retirement funds and establishing their Quest account. When that money is sitting there, you taught them about private money. You taught them your private lending program. I say just duplicate mine. And so they've moved the money over. Well, they're not making any money with that money sitting in their account. They're waiting for you to deploy that money, right? So again, it's all about teaching these people. They're relying on you. There's a 5-letter word in this world that begins with T. That's the word trust. So these people are trusting you to deploy their money just as soon as possible. So a private lender, an individual that loans you money on your deals, it's a one-on-one transaction and there's no middle person involved. So I'm not talking about joint venturing. I saw someone here in the comments just as we started out. It was, let's see here. Yes, Mike Maynard. Welcome to the presentation, Mike. So Mike, I saw your comment that you're all excited and interested in learning about how to partner with people. Well, there's a couple of different ways to do private money. You can have a private lender fund the deal, and then you can partner with them and you can share in the profits. The way I do it, and here's a writer downer, the way I do it, the private lender does not own the property. The private lender is not sharing in the profits of the deal. I'm paying my private lenders a straight interest rate. I'm either letting it accrue while I'm in the property. I will let it accrue and not even make payments. And then that's particularly how I'll do it, or you can do it when you're doing a flip, if you're only going to be in it for, 6, 9, or 12 months kind of thing. So I'm not joint venturing. Here's the writer downer. Private lender does not own the property. I'm not giving a percentage of the profit. I'm paying a straight interest rate. And I'm going to share with you here in a few minutes exactly what those interest rates look like. So we're not talking about the private lender being a hard money lender, and we're not talking about banks or institutions. Again, we're doing business directly with the individual that's got the account at Quest, or they could just have liquid investment capital as well, doing business directly with them. Now, the way I do private money, it works for single family houses, which is what I do. It also works for commercial deals. So it's the same money. It's the same private money, right? But you can use it on small apartments. You can use it on self-storage. You can use it on land, right? So I'm not talking about a syndication. I'm not raising money for a fund. However, you can do that if you're doing larger developments or larger apartment complexes. But everything that I do is what we call one-offs. And what I mean by a one-off is you've got a private lender, or maybe you've got a couple of private lenders that are funding a deal, and their note is being secured by the property. I'm not borrowing unsecured funds. I am securing their promissory note with the property that I'm purchasing. So as I just said, I'm not raising money for a fund. I'm not doing syndication. Every deal stands on its own. You have a private lender, or maybe a couple of private lenders, funding a house, right? Is the way that I do it. And as I just said, each private lender's loan is secured by the property that we're buying. Now, there are 3 markets, at least 3 different categories of where you find private money lenders. One category is people that you've got a connection with, right? I call it your warm market. People that are in your cell phone, right? People you go to church with, people on your email list, your social media, your Facebook connections, your Instagram connections. I mean, you have got millions and millions of dollars at your disposal just through your own connections. All you got to do is know how to reach out to them and teach them the private lending program. And then the money very, very quickly is going to be chasing you. My students that do private money the way that I do it, it's very common to get over $500,000 lined up in less than 30 days. So you start never missing out on a deal for not having the funding. A second category, sometimes people say, well, Jay, all my warm market is broke. Well, first of all, I don't believe them. But whether or not, I always teach people, networking has got a direct correlation to your net worth. So expand your warm market, right? Get involved in the local community, join the Rotary Club. Now, this strategy is a longer term play, but it gives you huge dividends, right? And then the third category of private lenders are existing private lenders. Where in the world do you find them? I'm going to talk more about that in just a little bit. Now, I want to give you a long list here. I hope you're taking notes and you can write fast, because this is a long list of why I absolutely love private money, why I love it. Okay, first of all, and these are in no particular order that I'm going over right now. First of all, there's no credit check. Your credit has got absolutely nothing to do with how much private money you can attract and raise. So, no credit check. And the reason for that is this is a collateral loan. It's a collateral based loan. So you're not borrowing unsecured money. Secondly, no income verification. I've never had any of my private lenders say, hey, I need to verify your income, Jay. Thirdly, there's no points. So no origination fees, in other words. So, when you're borrowing from any kind of institutional bank or any kind of institutional money, there's always origination fees and points. So when I'm doing business with my private lenders, I never pay points, never pay origination fees, never have. Fourthly, no appraisals. I've never had one of my private lenders say, hey, I need to see an appraisal on this property before I loan you money on it, right? Now, I may get an appraisal up front before I buy, and if it's like a really, really big property, but most of the time, I rely on my realtor's CMA, which of course stands for comparative market analysis. And my realtor knows how we fix our homes up, and he's going to assume that they're in excellent condition when he figures the after repair value. Multiple checks. Now, this is my favorite. This is my favorite reason for using private money, along with all the rest of these. And that is, I receive multiple checks on every transaction, every deal that I do. Well, how do I do that? Well, first check that I get is when I buy. I always bring home a big check when I buy the property. How do I do that? Because I always borrow more than I need to purchase it. And if there's rehab involved, I bring home all the rehab money when I buy. My real estate attorney's check stub has got a phrase that I absolutely love, and that's called excess cash to close. And I love me some excess cash. Well, of course, I get another check when I cash out on the property. That being the difference between what I sell it for and what I owe the private lender. And if I happen to sell the property on lease purchase or rent to own, in the middle of all that transactions, I'll get a large non-refundable lease option deposit. So talk about fixing your cash flow problem. I don't know a quicker way to get a big influx of money in your checking account than using private money, because we're going to bring home a big check when we buy. Now, you make the rules, right? The lender's not making the rules. Now, if you are doing business or you're talking with an existing private lender, someone that's already loaning money out, like for example, on the fourth Wednesday of each month at 6:30, Quest has got the networking event. Well, you're not going to be teaching at that networking event your private lending program. No, you're going to be getting to know each other and networking. They've already got their private lending program together. But when I say you make the rules, I'm talking about when you are teaching people in your own warm market what your private lending program is. You made the rules. You put the program together. I say just duplicate it out of my book. In addition to all that, there's no limit to the number of private lenders you can have. There's no limit to the amount of private money you can borrow and have at your disposal. Well, when I was borrowing money from the local bank, I had a limit to my line of credit. And when I had maxed that out, I couldn't borrow any more money from the bank until I cashed out a deal. In this world, there is no limit to the amount of private money you can have at your disposal, or the limit or number of private lenders. You can borrow across state lines. You can borrow from anybody, no matter where your property is. The reason for that is that private lenders are not regulated by the commissioner of banks. You're doing business with an individual to another individual. And the way I do private money, I'm not limited to accredited investors. I can borrow from anybody. And of course, you want to follow the exact scripting and the way that I do it so that you're not limited to accredited investors. You can borrow from anybody. In addition to all those reasons, here's more reasons why I love private money. You can close deals faster and negotiate more profitable deals. So let me tell you why that's so important. I get more offers accepted. I get more offers accepted than my little bit of competition because, and I even offer lower dollar amounts for purchase price. So how do I get more offers accepted? Because on my offers, I say I can close in 7 days. When you're using institutional money, I'm surprised anything ever closes, right? So I can close in 7 days. And I tell you what's beautiful about Quest, On My Land's Quest. And let me tell you, I've done business with other self-directed IRA companies prior to now. I refer all my private lenders that have retirement funds to Quest. Let me tell you, I get my deals funded within 3 days of Quest receiving the promissory note, the deed of trust, and the direction of investment being, signed electronically by the lender. I mean, for goodness sakes, 3 days. Quest has got it going on. Quest has got the customer service down. Don't think about doing business with any other self-directed IRA company because Quest has got the service down. Anyway, I get more offers accepted from sellers because I can close so quickly. In addition to that, more reasons. I'm able to do an unlimited number of deals with multiple private lenders. And here's another big one. In this world of doing business with private lenders, there's no personal guarantees. When I was borrowing money from the banks and institutions, I had to sign an individual guarantor, right? Guaranteeing that, putting all of our assets behind it in addition to the property. In this world, it's just the property, the real estate that we're buying, that is collateralizing the note. And then here's another great reason. I don't have to pay monthly payments, but at the end of the day, I let the private lender decide. Now, how do I not pay monthly payments? Well, if I'm borrowing money from someone that's got an account at Quest, well, the payments are not going to them individually. The interest is being earned in their Quest account. So I can simply let the interest accrue if I'm not going to be in it too long, 6, 9 months, 12 months, and I can just pay off the principal loan amount and the interest back to their Quest account. Now, again, I let the lender decide how often they want payments. I mean, if I'm borrowing from an elderly person, a senior, and they're just using investment capital, they're not using retirement funds, some of those people actually require monthly payments because they're living off of that money. So it all comes down to the objective of the private lender and what their needs are. Now, when are you going to use private money? Well, you're going to use private money when the seller, regardless of whether it's in the multiple listing service or you are or you're buying directly from a for sale by owner, when the seller requires all the cash, you're going to use private money. So what are some examples of that? Bank-owned properties, REOs, which stands for real estate owned, short sales, auctions. And as I said a few minutes ago, most for sale by owners will not sell on terms or creative financing. They're going to want all the cash, right? So without the private money, you're going to miss out on most of the deals. Now, first things first, let's talk about mindset. Now, I'm talking about when you're teaching your warm market, right? So I'm not out there begging. I'm not out there chasing, right? I'm not trying to talk anybody into doing anything. I'm teaching them in my warm market what my private lending program is. Okay. So, and again, when you're networking with an existing private lender that's already done some private lending themselves, there's no chasing or begging of that. That's just getting together and learning about each other and how you do business, and what kind of deals they like to do. So again, be authentic, be yourself. And I can tell you, here's a writer downer. Do you know the worst time in the world to be trying to raise in private money is when you need it for a deal, right? That's the worst time to be raising private money. So you want to be attracting, establishing relationships, teaching people in your warm market how your private lending program works. And now you got private money waiting, ready to be deployed. Now, just think how much more confident, think how much many more offers you're going to make because you got private money burning a hole in your pocket, right? So again, first things first, mindset. Until you own the real estate between your ears, it's going to be hard to own real estate out there. All right. So no chasing, no begging. It's all about teaching and serving and putting the other person first. Now, I just gave you a long, super long list as to why I love private money and doing business with private lenders. Well, let's talk about why the private lender wants to do business with us. As long as we know where they're coming from, we can serve them better. Well, first of all, we're not borrowing unsecured funds. You can legally, you can, right? But do not borrow unsecured funds. Now, people that have an account at Quest, they're probably not going to loan you unsecured funds anyway, right? But when you're teaching people in your warm market what private money is in your program, they are trusting you, right? And they don't know any better. They don't know any different. Protect your private lender by always securing their note with the real estate that you're investing in, right? They're going to get a deed of trust like here in North Carolina. Most people call it a mortgage. So, number one reason why are they interested? We're going to secure their note with the real estate. Secondly, they're going to make a lot of money. I mean, making a lot of money, right, is always a way to get somebody's attention. Well, I'm going to share with you here in just a few minutes the interest that I'm paying. Boy, it's a lot more times than they can get at the local bank in a 12-month certificate of deposit. Number three, interest only payments, if you're making payments, earns them more money, or just letting the interest accrue or earns them all money. So what I'm talking about is if we make payments, we're not paying principal and interest. We are paying or accruing interest only. Well, how's that a win-win for everybody? Well, if you make principal and interest payments, you're paying part of their principal down, and they don't have all of their money at work. They're not keeping all of their principal invested. So when it's accruing interest or interest only payments, that's a win for them. They make more money, and that's a win for you as the borrower, because if you're making payments, interest only payments are smaller on cash flow than principal and interest. And we also have in my private lending program that I offer to lenders, we also have a way that they can get their money back in case of an emergency, right? I'm going to go over that with you here in just a little bit. Now, what comes first? What I mean by this is, what should your focus be? What should your focus be? Should you go out looking for deals, getting deals under contract first? Or should you be teaching people and networking with people at Quest that are existing private lenders and getting private money lined up? Well, you should be getting the money lined up first. As I said, the worst time to be trying to raise money is when you need it for a particular deal. I've got some friends that teach, oh, go get the deal under contract. Go get the deal under contract, and the money will show up. And I go, like, where's the money going to show up? Is it like going to rain out of clouds? No. So you get your money lined up first, then you go putting deals under contract. But you want to put their money to work very, very quickly and make sure it doesn't disappear on you. Now, where to get private money? Well, I told you there's three categories: your people you know and existing private lenders. The third category is your expanded warm market. Well, in my book, Where to Get the Money Now, I teach specific strategies on how to expand your network very, very quickly. So here's the 5 steps. So if you want to write these down, Here are the 5 steps to attracting and raising money in your own market, in your own warm market. Step number 1, make your list. Now, in my book, Where to Get the Money Now, I give you specific instructions on how to make your list. I'll tell you where you should start your list. You should start your list of potential private lenders that you have connections with, people that are retired. People that are retired. I mean, people that are retired, there's a good chance they got retirement funds, and you can introduce them to your Quest representative, the IRA specialist, to answer any of their questions. And then Quest will hold their hand and get their retirement funds moved over from wherever they currently are now, no penalty, no taxes, and move it over to Quest to establish their account there. So make your list. Step number 2, you got your list. Now you're going to have a casual opening conversation that can take place over the phone or in person. Step number 3, then you can actually send them a link to what I call stress-free investing. That's a 16-minute audio that my book actually goes into the details of how that's created. And then step number 4, one-on-one appointments where you actually teach your private lending program. And then after the end of that conversation, you have a verbal pledge, and then you go get a deal under contract and put their money to work just as soon as possible. So let's talk about each of these steps for a moment. Step number 1, make your list. My book, Where to Get the Money Now, will hold your hand on making your list of people that you already have in your contacts. You got millions of dollars available to you. And in the book, I actually go into detail about how to expand your warm market. And I say the more money you wallow in, the more money sticks to you, right? So anyway, I go into that detail in the book. So you got your list. Now, step number 2 in your warm market is you're going to have a casual opening conversation. There's 2 kinds of conversations to have with people. One is the direct method. The other is what I call the indirect method. So the direct method, and again, I know I don't have much time here today to go into detail on this. It's all in the book. But the direct method, we use what's called the magic question. Well, what's the magic question? Well, here's the magic question. The question is, and you're talking to a potential private lender, do you have investment capital or retirement funds not giving you a high rate of return safely and securely? The magic question again is, do you have investment capital or retirement funds not giving you a high rate of return safely and securely? Now, that's the direct question, right? And if they say, yes, I do have funds that, I'm not happy with the returns, that opens up the door to teach them about your private lending program. But you may know some people that question you may not feel comfortable asking that to, particularly if it's someone that's loaded, right, that you're talking to. Then the indirect method is what we call I need your help. So the way that scripting goes, and again, it's all in the book, Where to Get the Money Now, that scripting is along the lines of, I need your help in putting the word out. Part of the script goes like this. Let's say I'm talking to a potential private lender that I go to church with, and his name is, David. I say, hey, David, I know you know everybody in this town. You're networked. You're in the Rotary Club. You've been around here for a long time. I'm now opening up my real estate investing business by referral only to people I know and trust. And when you come across someone that's complaining about the low CD rates in the bank or how volatile the stock market is, would you refer them to me, because I'm paying insane rates of return to people that do business with us? And so when you use that conversation, guess what? If that person that you're talking to has got investment capital and or retirement funds, they're going to want to hear about your program, right? So that's step number 2. Step number 3 is an audio, 16-minute audio. The scripting is in my book. And the purpose of this audio is to introduce somebody to the world of private money. It doesn't spill the beans. It doesn't teach your private lending program, but it introduces them to this world of private money and what private lending is. Now, again, all the details of this is in my book. If you joined here on the presentation a little bit late, I gave this out up front. And here it is. You can get the book for free. Just cover the carrying costs. I think it's $6.95. We'll ship it to you. You can't even download it. We ship it to you in the mail. It's at jayconner, and I'm with an ER, not an OR, JAYCONNER.com/book. Now, step number 4 in the private lending strategy with your warm market is now you're going to spill the beans. You're going to teach your private lending program, which of course is duplicated out of my book. You can you use my PowerPoint presentation. You can, hey, have a Zoom party. You know, it takes the same amount of time to teach your private lending program to 25 people on Zoom or a private lender luncheon as it does one person, right? So again, this one-on-one or one-to-many, this is where you actually teach the private lending program, right? You know, just at one private lender luncheon, I've raised $969,000 at one 90-minute private lender luncheon. All the details of how to have a successful private lender luncheon are in the book. Step number 5 is get a verbal pledge. You've taught them the program. You don't even have to ask them how much money they want to invest. When you teach the program, if they've got investment capital or retirement funds, they're going to be asking you, how do I start? How do I start? So there's no papers to sign. You know, they tell you, and now you go find a deal to use their money just as soon as possible. Well, those are the steps, and I know I had to go over them quickly. Those are the steps in your warm market, people you've got some kind of association with. Then there's existing private lenders, right? Well, I've got a private lender data feed that we update every month. The book will give you information on how to get information into that private lender data feed, but we get contact information for every private lender loan that's closed in the nation every month with their contact information. Of course, you're probably not going to need that because all you got to do is come to the networking party that Quest has every month at 6:30 on the fourth Wednesday of each month. So you can meet existing private lenders right there at the Quest networking. Here's an actionable item. Now, you probably have an account at Quest. Hopefully, you've got a relationship already with one of their IRA specialists. But if you don't have a relationship and have a go-to that you can refer new private lenders to at Quest, you need to reach out to Quest. You need to speak to an IRA specialist and tell them you're looking to establish a relationship with one of the reps that you can refer all of your new private lenders to Quest that have retirement funds. That's very, very important. Why is that important? Well, if you're talking with someone in your warm market, people you've got a relationship with, and you learn they got retirement funds, well, you need to have contact information with that IRA specialist at Quest so you can introduce them, right? Do a Zoom introduction or a 3-way call on the phone and get them introduced to the person that you know at Quest. Listen, you need to know your program. Remember, we're not asking for money in the warm market. We're teaching our private lending program. That's in my book. Listen, never teach or talk about your program, your private lending program that you're offering to a potential private lender and a deal that you've got in the initial conversation. My lands, what a mistake that is. If you do that, you already sound like you're begging. You already sound like you're chasing. So separate these activities. Teach your private lending program, all right? And then they tell you how much they've got to invest. Is it liquid capital? Is it retirement funds? Do you need to introduce them to your Quest IRA specialist? Now they got their account funded at Quest. Now go find a deal just as soon as possible, and then you're ready to go. Now, where do private lenders, where can they get money? I don't have time to go into this in detail, but obviously investment capital, money market accounts, savings accounts, retired people, as we've been talking about, that need to open up an account at Quest. And then you can use a strategy called arbitrage. I don't have time to go into how that works. It's in the book. It's how private lenders can use their home equity lines or portfolio loans that they have at their stock brokerage, or they can use their whole life insurance policy that they can borrow against and then loan money out to you. Those three strategies using arbitrage gives your private lender an infinite rate of return. They can't even calculate it because they're not loaning their money out to you. They're loaning somebody else's money out to you, right? So I don't have time to go into those last three strategies, but it's all in the book, laid out step by step. Now, the private lending program, I'm going to go over this like really, really fast because I want to make sure I get to the questions. So get the book, jconner.com/book, and all the details of this. And look, if you've got any questions, I mean, I actually answer the telephone at our office, right? You got any questions about how this private money thing works, get the book, call my office. We'll answer any questions you got. So here it is, rapid fire, the private lending program that I teach to my new private lenders and attract the money. And so here we go. I know you're not going to have time to write this down. It's all in the book. So number one, I recommend sticking with a maximum loan to value of 75% of the after repaired value. Okay, not 75% of the purchase price, but 75% of the after repaired value. The length of the note is either 2 years or 5 years. So if the private lender is loaning me just liquid capital, the length of the note is 2 years. If they're loaning me money from their Quest account, it's 5 years. The reason for that is no rush to pay it back. They're not looking for it to be paid off because the money's not coming back to them. Their returns are going to their account at Quest. 8%. I pay 8% to my private lenders that are in first position. Okay. And then I pay 10% if they're in a junior position. So like I can use larger amounts of money. By the way, they always got more than they tell you, right? I use larger amounts of money for purchasing, and then, smaller amounts of money, 30,000, 40,000. I can use that in a junior position for rehabs. I already talked about accruing or interest only payments. Frequency of payments. I'm either going to let the interest accrue until cash out, or I'm going to make monthly payments. Sometimes they're relying on that income, or I'll make quarterly payments or semi-annual. Any more these days, I don't like interest to accrue for an entire 12 months. But at the end of the day, I let the private lender decide how often they want payments. So frequency of payments, as I just said, it comes down to the lender's objection of their objectives. Early payoff, I can pay off early at any time with no penalty. However, I give an incentive to my private lenders that I'm going to pay them at least 6 months of interest if I cash out prior to 6 months. However, I do a lot of substitutions of collateral on smaller amounts of money. So if I do cash out early, then I will keep their note open and I will substitute the collateral with a different property if I have it. Now, here's how they can get their money back early in case they have an emergency. I put in the note a 90-day call option. If they have an emergency come up and the lender needs their money back early, just give me a 90-day notice. That gives me plenty of time to replace their money with another private lender's money. I typically do not give a 90-day call option when they're loaning me money from their Quest account. And that's because the likelihood of them needing the money as an emergency when they're using retirement funds are much, much less. Of course, we always have the real estate attorney prepare the closing documents, not you. Do not prepare your own closing documents here in North Carolina. That's malpractice right there. You're practicing law without a license. I don't know about your state, but regardless of what state you live in and you do business, always have your real estate attorney prepare the closing documents. And of course, there's no disbursement of funds. And remember, the private lender does not write you a check. Private lender wires their funds from their Quest account or from their investment capital directly to your closing agent, to the escrow account, and then funds are dispersed. We're going to name the private lender or their Quest IRA account as the mortgagee on the insurance policy. That way they are protected in case there's any claims against that property with the insurance policy. Range of investment, I'm going to use larger amounts in first position to purchase. Smaller amounts are used for rehabbing. The private lender documents, I'm always going to have an appraisal or a comparative market analysis. Private lender that I teach in my warm market, they could care less. They never ask for that. Promissory note. So the promissory note, the real estate attorney is going to prepare that. And the promissory note is very simple. It lays out who's the borrower, who's the lender, what's the principal loan amount, the interest rate, the frequency of payments, etc. We're going to collateralize the note with a deed of trust or mortgage, depending on which state you're in. And then, of course, we got the insurance policy and title policy. Again, here is the book, all the details of my private lending program. Order the book, www.jayconner.com, JAYCONNER.com/book. And sorry, I can't offer you a download. The publisher of my book wouldn't even allow that. It's a physical book. We actually have to snail mail it to you. And I promise you, we'll get it mailed out right away, just as soon as you claim and get your copy of it. So, Bree, I finished with 4 minutes left, but I can stay on as long as we need to answer questions.
Well, we certainly do have a few questions here for you, so I'll go ahead and jump right into it. From Mike, he says, what are the typical closing costs to complete a transaction with the private lender? And a question I think you may have already answered, are appraisals required?
Yeah, so the typical closing cost is going to depend on what state you're in. So my closing cost here with my, and I get a break with my real estate attorney because I give her so much volume of business, but typically my closing costs when I buy are around $650. And of course, I answered that about the appraisals. The private lenders, particularly when you teach them in your warm market, do not require a copy of the appraisal.
Thank you so much. And we have one from Steve as well. He asks that, do you have a template for the contract that you use for private money lenders?
So I'm not sure what Steve is asking there. So I don't have a contract between me and my private lenders. It's all, in other words, but when they fund a deal, the contractual agreement is they're getting that security, they're getting that mortgage, or they're getting that deed of trust. Now, when it comes to a contract that I use when I'm buying a property, I use the standard North Carolina Realtor Association offer to purchase. So hopefully, Steve, whichever way you were asking that question, I was able to answer it.
And we have a couple more from Mike as well. After you find the deal and make the call, and this may be something that is included in your book, but interested in how you present the information about the investment to the investor, he says he would expect a prospectus.
I've never had a private lender ask me for a prospectus. Now, you are going to be using that word prospectus when you are doing syndication and if you're raising money for a fund. So after I find the deal and make the call, how do I present the information? Well, I went over that about an hour ago, so you might not have been here, Mike. But anyway, I present the information by giving them 4 pieces of information. Now, this is a private lender that's waiting for me to deploy their funds. I call them up. I say, I got good news for you. I can now put your money to work. I give them 4 pieces of information. I give them the after repaired value of the property. I tell them the township the property is located in, the funding required, which always matches the amount they've got, because I know how much they've got, right? And fourthly, the closing date. And I would tell them my real estate attorney is going to email wiring instructions, and then that's it.
Thank you very much for that. You got some kudos from Mike as well, just stating that teaching the values of a self-directed IRA to build relationships is brilliant. We'd have to agree on this side. A lot of good kudos for you in the chat throughout this presentation.
Awesome.
Another final question I think I have from Mike. Do you write your own deeds of trust, or is an attorney required? I think you answered that one as well.
In North Carolina, an attorney is required. And regardless of what state you're in or where your property is, I still say use an attorney. Don't draw up your own documents.
And we would agree with that as well. So we have a couple from Braxton. He asks, is this able to be used to purchase mortgage notes?
Absolutely. I'm so glad you asked that, Braxton. And by the way, if you want to learn about note buying and selling notes and investing in notes, the best person I know on the planet is Eddie Speed. out of Texas. And of course, Eddie's a big endorser of Quest as well. I was with Eddie earlier this week at a mastermind meeting. But yes, absolutely. And so when you're investing in notes, the asset that is backing that note is a mortgage note, right? Instead of a single family house, as we talked about.
Thank you for that one. And our next question we have for you. In your program, do you teach how to use a Quest account to do these deals? In other words, if I have a Coverdale and I'd like the account to receive proceeds of these deals.
Absolutely. So I go into detail in the book, and it's very, very simple. So yes. Yes. Yeah. Hey, Bree, yes is the short answer.
Yes is the short answer. Absolutely. Oh, I have two from Steve here, and we're almost done. But he asks about pooling multiple private money parties together on these notes.
Right. So great question, Steve. So my definition of pooling, when we pool, that's when you're raising money for a private placement memorandum, a PPM. So you're doing syndication. So in that case, your private lenders would be investing in a fund. So the way I'm doing it is what I said is what we call one-offs. So our private lenders are being secured by that property. So the short answer, Steve, is no.
I love it. Short and sweet. One more from Steve. He asks, if you have a first position for the purchase, how do you safely and secure the rehab money?
Yeah. So great question, Steve. So the second position private lender, I can tell you in most of the cases, the only time you're going to get second position money are people in your warm market that you have taught. There's very, very few existing, I don't even know any existing private lenders that will take a second position. So how do I protect them? A couple of different ways. First of all, I'm still not borrowing the money unsecured. They're still getting their own note. They're getting their own deed of trust in second position. Secondly, I'm disclosing on the promissory note what position they are in. And three, I'm paying them a little bit more interest, 10% versus the 8%. So I'm securing them by still giving them their own deed of trust.
Thank you so much for that. We got one final question for you, it looks like, coming from Braxton regarding the structure of your business, whether this is an LLC or an S Corp.
Yes, it's an LLC.
Perfect.
LLC.
Well, if we have no more questions, feel free to still type while we're wrapping up. We want to say thank you so much for joining us today, Jay. We have a lot of great questions, a lot of good interaction. A lot of people were very excited for this presentation. So we very much enjoy having you on our platform and appreciate you taking the time on a weekend to come up here and talk a little bit about this.
Absolutely. Bree, thank you so much for having me on. And to all of you, Braxton, Steve, Mike, Emily, all of you that are joining, thank you so much for taking time out of your weekend to give me the opportunity to present this information to you. And I hope to stay connected with everyone.
Alrighty, guys. Well, thanks so much for joining us for another Saturday. Special thank you to you, Jay. If you have any questions, I'm going to put our IRA specialist email in the chat. We can certainly get you in contact with Jay as well. I would encourage you to check out all of the resources he's provided to you today. A lot of really great information out there. So thank you all so much, and I hope everyone has a great weekend.